Ever heard the story of how Devi came to be? No, it's not just some ancient myth. It's wisdom that reveals something deep about the universe and about you. Imagine three fundamental forces coming together to create the feminine energy capable of turning chaos into order. Sounds like something far from your everyday life? Wait until you see how this principle works within you every single day. And the craziest part, modern science is starting to confirm what ancient sages already knew. Want to see how it all connects? Then pay close attention. Everything in the universe happens because three fundamental forces, proton, neutron, and electron, are constantly in motion. Think of a car. The engine, battery, and fuel need to work together for the vehicle to move. In the same way, these particles only function because an invisible electromagnetic charge keeps them moving, making creation possible. Without that push, nothing would exist. Now, think about how this applies to everyday life. Your heart beats, your brain processes thoughts, and your body performs actions thanks to electrical impulses. Need an example? When you touch something hot, your nervous system sends electrical signals to your brain, telling you to pull your hand away. Everything works because there's an invisible force behind every action. Similarly, the entire universe operates under this principle, with unseen forces shaping every detail of reality. Pretty interesting, right? And here's the key point. Just as the universe depends on this force to exist, your life depends on the energy you put into your thoughts and actions. If the energy guiding your mind is chaotic, your results will be unpredictable. But if you learn to direct this energy consciously, you can shape your reality. And that brings us to something even deeper, connected to the space where these forces exist. Look, the universe isn't just made of things, it needs space for those things to exist. Imagine walking into a room packed with furniture. If there's no space between them, you can't move. In the same way, without space, protons, neutrons, and electrons couldn't dance the dance of creation. And that space, that's Devi. She's not a particle like the others. She's the invisible womb that holds everything together. Without her, neither the universe nor you could exist. Now, take a look at your own life. You might never think about the space around you, but try staying in a cramped room for too long. Pretty soon, discomfort sets in. In the same way, your mind needs space. If your thoughts are all crammed together, you can't think clearly. That's why when you meditate, you're not just calming your mind, you're creating space. And in that space, new possibilities begin to appear. So understanding Devi isn't just about knowing the cosmos. It's realizing that this feminine principle is alive within you. If there's space in your mind, there's clarity. If there's space in your heart, there's love. And if there's space in your life, there's freedom. But listen carefully. Throughout history, not every culture recognized this force. And that leads us to something you need to understand about what happened to the feminine principle over time. You see, throughout history, many cultures failed to recognize the value of the feminine principle. They focused only on what they could see and touch, forgetting the invisible space that makes everything possible. But in India, we've always understood that the feminine is essential. It's not just about women, it's about the qualities of inclusion, creation, and nurturing. That's why Devi is worshipped here, not as some abstract idea, but as the very foundation of existence. Now understand, that doesn't mean everything's always been perfect. Over time, the pursuit of power and survival made people forget the true essence of the feminine. They began treating it as something fragile or secondary. But listen, there's nothing fragile about Devi. She's the space that holds galaxies together. Thinking the feminine is weak is like saying space is useless just because you can't touch it. That's a huge mistake. So, what does this have to do with your life? Simple. If you're constantly chasing results without creating space for creativity, love, and compassion, you're ignoring an essential part of yourself. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, the feminine principle exists in everyone. But to awaken it, you need to learn to create space in your mind and heart. And trust me, when you do that, something extraordinary begins to happen. And it has everything to do with the energy of Devi, who emerged in a unique way during times of chaos. There was a time when destructive forces threatened the very fabric of existence. Chaos spread like wildfire through a dry forest. At that moment, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, the three pillars of creation, preservation, and transformation, united their essence. It wasn't a simple gesture. Imagine three powerful rivers converging at one point, creating an unstoppable current. From that fusion, Devi was born the embodiment of feminine energy. Not as a delicate figure, but as a force capable of restoring order in the midst of chaos. Now, you might be thinking, what does that have to do with me? Well, think about those moments in your life when everything seems out of control, problems at work, conflicts at home, or that feeling that nothing's going your way. It's in those moments that you need to tap into this feminine energy within you, not to fight against chaos, but to transform it. How? Start by creating space in your mind. Sometimes solutions show up when you stop resisting and simply observe. Meditation is a powerful way to do this. And if meditating feels hard, just start by sitting quietly for a few minutes each day. It might sound simple, but the impact is profound. Understand this. Devi didn't destroy chaos with brute force. She transformed it because her nature is to include, not exclude. And that's exactly what you can do in your life. Instead of fighting against your problems, learn to embrace them, understand them, and then transform them. When you do that, something shifts inside you. And that transformation opens doors to something even deeper, something that, interestingly, has a lot in common with what modern science is beginning to discover. Look, Devi's story isn't just some ancient myth. If you look at modern science, you'll notice a curious similarity. Protons, neutrons, and electrons can only exist because an invisible force keeps them moving. In the same way, Devi isn't a particle. She's the space that makes existence possible. Think of an atom. Without the space around its particles, it wouldn't exist. And that's not just poetry, it's physics. Now, think about your body. Your cells function because an electric field keeps everything in balance. Every heartbeat, every thought in your brain happens because invisible forces are working non-stop. But here's the thing. You don't need to understand quantum physics to use this knowledge in your life. All you need to realize is that what happens inside you is influenced by the energy you carry. If your mind is full of negative thoughts, that energy affects your body. Ever noticed how stress makes people sick? That's no coincidence. So, what does this mean? That just as the universe works thanks to Devi's space, your life works better when there's space for balance. It's not enough to pack your days with tasks and worries. You need to create space for silence, rest, and things that nourish your soul like art, music, and love. And here's the interesting part, that balance doesn't depend on your gender. Because the feminine, in its deepest sense, isn't about being a man or a woman. It's a quality that everyone has, but few know how to use. And that brings us to something you need to understand about what it really means to be feminine. Now, listen closely. Being feminine has nothing to do with biological gender. It's not about being a man or a woman. The feminine is a quality, a way of existing in the world. It's the ability to include, to nurture, to create. Think of a tree. It doesn't choose who can rest in its shade. It simply offers. That's the nature of the feminine. And here's the curious part. The more you develop that quality, the more people around you feel comfortable near you. It's like something invisible within you says, "There's space for you here, but look, living this way isn't always easy." In today's world, people are so busy chasing success that they forget what it's like to simply be present for others. Ever notice how some people are so focused on their goals that they seem to miss everyone around them? The problem is, when you live like that, you end up disconnecting from life itself. That's why cultivating the feminine isn't just about being kinder, it's about making space for what truly matters. And believe it or not, this can completely change your relationships, your work, and even your health. So, how do you bring this quality into your daily life? Start by paying more attention to the people around you. When someone talks to you, really listen instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. If you can help someone, do it without expecting anything in return. And most importantly, make time for things that feed your soul, whether it's playing an instrument, painting a picture, or simply listening to the sound of rain. Because in the end, the true power of the feminine lies in making the world around you a little more welcoming. But here's the thing. In a world focused on survival, this quality doesn't always have space to bloom. And that's where things start to get interesting. You see, when survival is the priority, the world naturally leans toward the masculine side. Why? Because masculine traits are geared toward action, competition, and achievement, qualities that are essential when the goal is simply to stay alive. Imagine a group of people trapped in a forest. In that scenario, the ones who can hunt, build shelter, and protect the group become indispensable. There's not much room for contemplation or sensitivity when every day is a fight to survive. But here's the point. Most people today aren't battling wild animals or raging storms. Yet, many still live as if life is a constant struggle. Just look at the workplace, for example. It's always about being faster, more efficient, and more competitive. The result? Many people end up pushing aside feminine qualities, creativity, empathy, and the ability to care for themselves and others. And the worst part is, this doesn't only happen to men. Many women, in order to succeed, feel like they have to act more masculine, becoming rigid and competitive. Now, I'm not saying these qualities are bad. They have their place. The problem is when they take over everything. Imagine someone driving a car with their foot glued to the gas pedal, never touching the brake or steering wheel. It won't be long before something goes wrong. In the same way, living only with masculine energy leads to burnout. True balance comes when you learn to use the focus and determination of the masculine alongside the inclusion and creativity of the feminine. But here's the challenge. In a world where material wealth is still seen as the key to survival, finding that balance becomes harder and harder. And that's where many people start to lose their way. Now, pay attention. The biggest mistake of the modern age is confusing survival with success. Look, making money is necessary, but turning it into the only measure of a successful life is like spending your whole life counting bricks without ever building the house. The problem is that to thrive in a world obsessed with results, many abandon the essence of the feminine, the ability to create, nurture, and include. And this affects both men and women. But for women, there's extra pressure. To be taken seriously, they often feel they have to act with the rigidity of the masculine. You've seen this happen, haven't you? That talented woman who, to climb the career ladder, has to hide her sensitivity, becoming more competitive and distant. The result is that instead of thriving with their natural qualities, they end up putting on armor that disconnects them from who they truly are. And the worst part is that this doesn't just happen at work. Even at home, many people are so focused on winning at life that they drift away from those who matter most. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with chasing success. The problem is when that chase becomes so intense that you forget what it means to truly live. So, how do you change that? First, understand that success is not the same as survival. If your goal is just to pay bills and accumulate stuff, you're playing the wrong game. True success happens when you balance achievement with the ability to enjoy life. And here's the thing, that balance is only possible when you make space for the feminine principle within yourself. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman without that quality. Life becomes dry and meaningless. But here's the good news. In some parts of the world, this balance is already starting to emerge. And that gives us a glimpse of what the future could be. Imagine a future where the feminine principle finally has space to thrive. But that only happens when people stop living just to survive and start living to create. Picture a society where success isn't measured only by the size of your bank account, but by your ability to make the world more beautiful and compassionate. In a place like that, art, music, love, and creativity wouldn't be seen as luxuries, they'd be essential parts of life. And trust me, that future isn't a fantasy, it's a choice that every person can make. Now, you might be thinking, but what does that have to do with me? Look, the balance between the masculine and the feminine doesn't start with governments or corporations. It starts within each person. When you make space for creativity in the middle of your daily routine, when you choose to act with empathy, even in tough situations, you're bringing the feminine into your life. And the most interesting part, it doesn't make you weaker, on the contrary. It gives you a strength that comes from understanding, not competition. Ever notice how the wisest people are the ones who know when to act and when to simply observe? That's the power of balance. So, how do you apply this in your daily life? Simple. If life feels too rushed, take a few minutes for something that feeds your soul. Listen to a song you love, paint a picture, or even write without worrying about the result. At work, instead of only chasing results, try to create an environment where people feel valued. And above all, remember that true fulfillment comes when you stop seeing life as a race and start living it as a dance. Because, in the end, it's this dance between the masculine and feminine that brings true balance. And that balance leads to something even deeper, connected to how we see life itself. Look, real fulfillment doesn't come from conquering the world, it comes from becoming part of it. Imagine life as a river. You can try swimming against the current, fighting to get somewhere, or you can learn to flow with it, letting it take you where you need to be. Those who live only to conquer end up exhausted, because they're always at war with reality. But those who learn to include everything life brings, the joys, the challenges, the successes, and the failures, discover a freedom that few ever know. The problem is that in today's world, many people live as if they're always competing. Just look at the workplace. If you don't deliver results fast, you get left behind. Even in relationships, some see others as something to conquer. But living like that is like trying to hold water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the more it slips away. True strength isn't about controlling life, it's about allowing life to flow through you. And here's the thing, when you stop fighting against life, something curious happens. The things that used to feel hard start happening more naturally. Why? Because you're no longer wasting energy resisting what is. So, what does this mean in practice? First, stop seeing obstacles as enemies. If something didn't go the way you wanted, ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of trying to control everything, learn to adapt. And most importantly, remember that life isn't a competition. When you start including others in your journey, helping, sharing, teaching, something inside you shifts. It's like life itself starts opening doors where there used to be walls. But look, this isn't just a nice idea, it's something you can start living right now. Now that you understand Devi's role and the balance between the masculine and feminine, the question is, how can this transform your life? Are you living just to survive, or are you creating space for what really matters? Maybe it's time to bring more creativity, love, and compassion into your daily life. So, how about taking the first step today? Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue this journey of learning.